Welcome to the place where we take complex research and give you the essential knowledge fast. I'm Mike.
And I'm Susan. It's great to be here.
Today we are exploring the profound and often troubling impact of screen time and social media on mental health.
Right, focusing specifically on adolescents and young adults.
But before we get into it, welcome everyone to vpod.ai. You can sponsor this podcast for just $25. Your message will be featured across major platforms like Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and more. If you're interested, contact info@vpod.ai to get started today. Okay, so the stakes here couldn't be higher. We're talking about a documented surge in depression and anxiety.
A huge surge.
And we really need to understand the relationship between that crisis and the stunning amount of time young people spend on their devices.
Yeah.
Just to set the scene, the baseline data on usage, it's just staggering.
It is.
For tweens, we're talking 9, 10-year-olds, the average non-educational screen time is 5.5 hours.
A day.
5.5 hours. And by the time they're teens, that number jumps to 8.5 hours daily. That's a full-time job.
It's a full-time job spent staring at a screen. And those hours are unfolding against a very dark backdrop.
Talk about that.
Well, if we look at adolescents today, they are 50% more likely to have a major depressive episode.
50%.
And 30% more likely to commit suicide compared to their peers just 20 years ago.
Wow.
So the central question, the really crucial question for researchers has been, is this just a correlation? Or is social media use actually a driver?
The classic chicken or egg debate.
Exactly. Does the screen time cause the crisis? Or are kids who are already depressed just, drawn to the digital world?
And for a long time, that's where the conversation stalled. But you found some compelling new data on that, right? On causality.
We have. There's a recent longitudinal study, which means it tracks the same group of kids over several years, and it offers some real clarity. It followed preteens from age 9 to 13 and looked at how their mental health and their usage patterns changed over time. And the results, they cut right through that correlation question.
What did they find?
They found that when an individual kid's social media use went up, say, they started spending an hour more per day online. That was associated with elevated depressive symptoms in the next follow-up.
So more screen time predicted a later downturn in mood.
Precisely. And here's the punchline, the thing that really tilts the debate.
Okay.
The reverse was not true. An existing rise in depressive symptoms did not predict a later increase in social media use.
So it's not that sad kids go online more.
It's not. This provides really compelling evidence that social media is contributing to the development of these symptoms. It's an active factor, not just a symptom of being down.
That is a profound finding.
Yeah.
But how do we know? I mean, how did the researchers make sure other life events like problems at school or home weren't the real cause?
That's why these longitudinal studies are so powerful. They controlled for all of that baseline depression, demographic factors. They focused on the individual's change over time.
And the link was still there.
It was still robust. It suggests a unique digital pathway to distress.
Okay, so that gives us the causal link for younger teens. What about older groups? What does the data show for, say, college students?
The consistency is remarkable. For young adults, 18 to 25, we see a crystal clear dose-response relationship.
Meaning the more you use, the worse the outcome.
Exactly. There was a study of over 800 young adults, and their average daily use was about 4.2 hours.
Which feels almost low now.
It does. But when they split this group into heavy users, more than 6 hours a day, and light users, less than 2, the differences were dramatic.
Let's get specific on that. What do the scores actually mean?
So on a clinical depression scale, the PHQ-9, heavy users averaged a 12.4. On the anxiety scale, they scored an 11.2.
And the light users?
Light users, so under 2 hours, scored a 6.8 for depression and 7.1 for anxiety.
That is an incredible gap. A 6.8 is, minimal to mild depression? But a 12.4, that pushes someone right into the moderate depression range.
It absolutely does. That's a clinically meaningful difference. You're talking about a 5.6-point jump based primarily on hours spent scrolling.
The volume of use itself seems to push people over a diagnostic line.
And you can quantify it even more. For each additional hour of daily use, depression scores went up by 1.2 points, anxiety by 0.8, and, this is telling, self-esteem scores went down by 1.1 points.
A steep linear decline.
A very steep decline.
So if the average young adult is using these platforms for over 4 hours a day, We have to stop asking what's wrong with the users
I agree.
and maybe start asking what's wrong with the design.
That takes us directly to the dark patterns, the behavioral economics baked into these platforms.
How so?
Well, these systems are built to promote what researchers call digital overuse. Let's start with something simple. Infinite scrolling.
Seems harmless enough?
It sounds it, but it's an insidious design choice. It eliminates all the natural stopping points.
Like turning a page in a book.
Exactly. That little moment of friction gives your brain a chance to interrupt the cycle.
Yeah.
By removing it, you lose awareness of how long you've been consuming. You just keep going.
It's like a highway with no off-ramp.
That's a perfect analogy. But the real manipulation, the core psychological trap, is the variable reward system.
What's that?
It's intermittent reinforcement. It's the slot machine effect. You never know when you'll see a post that makes you laugh or get a surprising notification.
Right, so you keep pulling the lever.
You keep pulling. Your brain is constantly chasing that next little dopamine hit, that feeling of novelty. It's not about finding information anymore. It's about chasing a feeling.
So we're essentially being conditioned by design choices that tap right into our brain chemistry.
That's it. From a neurobiological view, social network addiction shows symptoms really similar to substance addictions, like tobacco or alcohol. Studies show it actually alters dopamine receptors in the brain.
The ones that control motivation and reward.
The very same ones. These platforms aren't just entertaining, they're habit-forming by design.
Okay, this is getting really interesting. If we're on these sites for hours, does the way we spend that time matter more than the raw number of hours?
This is where it gets fascinating. Because yes, the manner of engagement is absolutely key. The research points to a critical distinction between two main behaviors.
And they are.
First is passive consumption. This is just browsing, scrolling through posts, watching stories, but not really engaging.
Just lurking.
Exactly. And that emerged as the single most problematic behavior. It had the strongest negative link to depression, anxiety, and low self-esteem.
So the quiet comparison, what people call doom scrolling, that's the highest risk activity. Why?
Because it maximizes your exposure to curated, airbrushed, perfect images of other people's lives. It just triggers rumination and negative self comparison. You're seeing an impossible standard, and your brain just defaults to comparing your reality to their highlight reel.
Okay, so what's the other behavior?
The other is active engagement, specifically direct messaging or private communication.
Talking to friends.
Right. And that showed no significant association with negative mental health indicators. If you're using the platform to maintain direct one-on-one relationships, it doesn't seem to carry the same psychological risks.
That makes perfect sense. Direct connection is good. Passive comparison is destructive. Did the type of platform matter here?
It did, and it supports that same theory. Visual platforms like Instagram and TikTok showed the strongest negative associations.
Because they're all about appearance and lifestyle.
Exactly. They're basically engines designed for social comparison, and that just accelerates the whole negative feedback loop.
And this constant exposure, it's not just about mood. It has to affect how we think, how we rest.
The impact on cognition is severe. That constant, rapid stream of superficial content, it just prevents deep concentration. Our brains aren't built for it.
So nothing sticks.
Nothing sticks. It's an extreme version of the Google effect. Users of networks with infinite scroll often literally cannot remember the last few posts they just saw.
The content is so fleeting, it just bypasses short-term memory entirely.
It does, but it still leaves you mentally fatigued.
Which brings us to sleep. I mean, screen use before bed is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
What's the data on that specific behavior?
The data on evening use is really compelling. Evening use, so after 9 p.m., was reported by almost 75% of participants.
3/4 of them.
And it showed a very strong correlation with poor sleep quality.
What's the mechanism there? Is it just the light?
It's a two-part punch. First, yes, the blue light from the screen suppresses melatonin, the hormone you need to sleep.
Right.
But second, there's the psychological part. The anxiety, the arousal from the variable reward system.
Right.
It keeps your mind active when it should be winding down.
So your brain is still firing on all cylinders.
Exactly. And this sleep disruption is a huge mediator. What that means is social media harms mental health largely by destroying your sleep. You're robbing your brain of the nightly maintenance it needs to handle stress and memory.
So what does all this mean for us? I mean, if the design is the trap, what can be done by users, by parents, by the platforms themselves?
The fundamental issue is the business model. It's all about screen time and ad sales, not user welfare. So, platforms have a moral obligation to change.
Which brings up this idea of value-sensitive design. But practically, why would a platform ever implement a pause button? I mean, their profit relies on maximizing your time on site.
That's the critical friction point. The incentive right now is public pressure and the threat of regulation. But VSD offers practical solutions. A simple pop-up saying, "You've been browsing for 30 minutes, want to continue," could be enough to interrupt that compulsive cycle.
Give the user a moment of control back.
A moment of control, and beyond that, education is crucial. We need digital literacy in schools, teaching young adults mindful usage, how to spot social comparison.
So you empower the user to fight back against the design. What about for families?
Parental guidance is a huge lever. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends creating a family media use plan.
Which is more than just screen time limits.
Much more. It's about setting screen-free times for the whole family, like during meals or the hour before bed. It creates boundaries and shows there's a life outside the screen.
That's a perfect summary. A mix of intentional design changes and proactive personal choices. So to wrap this up for you, our listener, the big takeaway seems to be that the severity of the impact depends less on total minutes and much more on how you engage.
That's it. If you are passively consuming endless curated content, you are maximizing your psychological risk.
But if you're actively using it for direct, intentional communication, that risk basically disappears.
It does. And as you think about that, here's a final thought to consider. The research shows that some people are just more resilient to these negative effects than others. So instead of only focusing on the platform, reflect on your own personal protective factors. What you have in your life: strong offline relationships, good sleep habits, emotional regulation skills that might buffer you from the negative impacts. Understanding your own defenses is just as important as understanding the threat itself.
A perfect call to action for more mindful digital living. Thank you for synthesizing all of this for us today.